So I thought it might make sense to talk about digital, where we are today, and the changes that are happening. So it's the old Delta. Clever, right? Right? No? So change, right? A lot of change happening. For me personally, I emigrated 2 years ago, big change. Right, so there's some good changes in the country. It's interesting about this guy, because you throw it up here in a room like this, and all of a sudden the room is divided. There's two camps. All right, I know how to approach this guy. He's like a liberal. He's got tattoos and like some earrings or whatever. But if you go the other way, if I threw up a picture of Palin, it's like, well, it's great that we had a woman running for president. But like, oh, well, I got to approach the guy this way. He's a conservative, right? So I find these sorts of like subtle behavioral things with regards to kind of media. I find these things are what keeps me in the industry. Understanding that. So a lot of good change, because I'm from Africa, right? So I think it's good change. Some bad change as well. So when I emigrated, right, I didn't have a green card or a work permit or any of that stuff. So hiring an African in the middle of a recession, it didn't go well, to say the least, right? So I'm close to the recession. So it affected everybody. Right, like it was on the headlines for 6 months or whatever, and it was just doom and gloom and bad here, right? Like I saw some stuff. You saw some pieces about like vulture property guys that went into Miami and cleaned up because they like on foreclosures, and you saw like a lot of horror stories, right? Touched everything. So it obviously affected the consumer. Okay, so what we saw with the consumer was people weren't buying. They weren't going on holiday to their house in Monaco, but they were buying luxury perfume. And they weren't buying a new car, but they were going to have a massage. So how did it affect the marketer? So that's my big question. So in 2008, digital spend was 15%, right, of all advertising spend. So 2009, anybody know? 12%. Is this a good number or a bad number? Bad number? That's a good number, I think, because everybody else dropped 6%. So we thought we were going to be at 9%. Now, when you lose 6% of your annual spend, you lose your job. That's what happens, right? Like, everybody was shitting themselves. So this number here, that's a really good number. Okay, 12%. But it is a bad number, right? Why is it a bad number? Because that is how much time consumers are spending online. So there's this massive disconnect between how much credence marketers pay to digital and how much time consumers pay to digital. So I suspect this is because digital's not that easy. It's hard to report on, it's hard to understand. There's also, it's like the Wild West as well, like when you're serving banners, when you're serving digital, because you just don't know what you're getting. So marketers have stayed away from it because it's so much easier to say, fuck it, I don't get it. I'm going to go with a 30-second spot, right? So why is this a good number? Why is 12% a good number for us? Because it represented less of a loss than everybody else, right? So then the question is, well, why is that? Well, because, that way. Digital is mass media. So this is a UK article. Now this blew me away, right? So web beats TV to biggest advertising share. First time last year ever. So traditionally, America is about 7-8 years behind where advertising is in the UK. So this is massive, right? If the UK is trending for digital to be more than TV, it's a really big flag in the right direction for digital. So that is one of the reasons, because it's a trend. But I think this poorly depicted funnel, I think this is the big reason. So the idea is basically, this is the marketing funnel, right? So it's awareness, consideration, trial. Right? So it's a pain in the ass for a number of reasons, because marketers love it because you can measure all the stuff and you can build a plan to it. So you can say, if we get 100 people in the top and 40 drop out and we have 20 convert, then you can like back into KPIs, right? So they love it. I hate it. Oh, dear me. I hate the funnel because it takes the consumer out of consideration. It doesn't consider all the touch points that the consumer has to enter here or enter here. But that's just a side note, right? So another reason why digital is becoming more important, because the funnel is fundamentally changed, right? The way the internet works is that there's branding at the top and there's fulfillment at the bottom. The internet is all about fulfillment. You go, you see a TV ad, you search for it, and then you buy it on Amazon, right? That's the way the internet was set up to work. That's not happening today. And smart marketers are getting in front of that, and they're realizing that. So what's happening today is digital is affecting branding. And it's very simply, it's the oldest trick in the book, it's word of mouth. That is how digital affects branding. Because all of a sudden, if I go to Amazon looking for a book, right, or like what to read, where do I fucking start, right? But if I go to my Facebook page, I'm like, I'm looking for a new book, and I get 50 recommendations from 50 people that I know and trust, and whose phone number I know, that's going to go a long way to awareness and branding for me at the top of the funnel. And of course, fulfillment at the bottom as well. So I think this is why marketing for digital is fundamentally shifting. How is search changing? So search is an interesting thing. It's a prime mover, okay? And it's the ultimate utility because there's video in it, there's fulfillment in it, there's reviews in it, there's branding in it. Search is the ultimate utility. But now it has to be live, right? Because the right time is right now for search. So this is a whole shift in the way search is set up, and you're seeing Google are having to respond. When Google are having to respond and change their business model, you know, something's up, like a bit of a flag. Same thing with Bing. Bing have got to deal with Twitter for live search. So, what we're seeing for Twitter for the Iran elections, so the share of search, it was 55% of search happened on Twitter versus 20% for the Iranian elections on Google. Now, think about that for a sec, right? There's 78% market share for Google. Google kills search. It's, right? And Twitter are outperforming them by more than one to two. You know what I mean? So from a search perspective, things are changing. I think that the concept of social media won't exist in about 2 or 3 years. Because everything is going to be social. There is going to be the idea you couldn't operate in a silo. You could not operate in the idea that search is separate from display, is separate from video, is separate from a website, is separate from out of home, is separate from activation, is separate from your print. It couldn't happen. So the idea that social media is its own little thing has to go away in 2 or 3 years' time. So what are we seeing? Well, social media is trusted, right? Now, you can't use Wikipedia as a resource, right? Or as a, no. It is trusted though, right? Like you may not be able to use it here, but you trust it, right? Right. So it's a trusted resource. It's trusted so much that it could be a buying decision. You would make a purchase based on what you hear in Wikipedia, right? So social media is trusted. It's influential and it has gravity to it, okay? So, I mean, these numbers are all the time, but this one, I like this one. 1.7 million photos served a second. 1.8 billion chat messages per day. 250 billion page views a month. It has gravity. And as soon as something has gravity, brands recognize that. So Unilever, Axe and Dove, and Coca-Cola, I must be honest, I'm not sure if it's all of Coke or just Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola. They've said no more microsites. All their campaign sites are going to happen on-site on social media sites. That's huge. That's massive. Everything's going to be at Facebook, /Coca-Cola, my drink, whatever it might be. That's massive. For Unilever to have said no more campaign sites. So what this all means basically is that we don't control our brands anymore, right? If we as marketers think we control our brands, totally naive. And because we don't control our brands, the fulfillment business has to change. So my badly depicted funnel